She was lying on the cold ground, her skin cut and burned, her arms too weak to move, her breath slow and heavy, like the weight of the sky on her chest. The air was full of smoke. The fire was burning far away, black clouds rising into the sky like angry spirits screaming in silence. Her body was broken, her wounds open, her blood making small rivers on the dirt, but no one came to help her. No voice called her name. No friend returned to find her. She was alone. The battlefield was quiet now. The sound of guns and screams was gone. Only the wind whispered through the metal pieces and dead machines around her. She looked up at the sky, but she could not see the stars, only dust and smoke. Like the sky itself had forgotten her. She remembered the moment her ship was hit. The loud noise, the burning light, the way her legs stopped moving when she fell, the fear in her chest as her own people ran away. They did not care if she lived or died. They had already decided she was useless. Now she moved her hand, just a little, just to feel something, but pain answered her, sharp and strong like a knife through her bones. Then she felt something else. Flies, small black flies, landed on her wounds. They walked over her broken skin, touched the blood, drank it, fed on it, and she had no strength to move them away. She wanted to scream, but her throat was dry. No sound came out, only a slow breath. She closed her eyes. She thought this was her end. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and warm, saying one day she would be a soldier, saying she would bring honor to their name. She remembered her brother, laughing and throwing stones in the river, saying he would wait for her to come back. She remembered the stars, bright and beautiful, and wondered if they still shined. But then she heard something strange. Footsteps, low, steady, coming closer, not fast like a soldier, not loud like a machine, just soft and careful, like someone walking through a graveyard. She opened her eyes, just a little, and saw a shadow above her. It was not like her people. Not tall, not blue, not fur-eyed, but something else. A human. Her heart jumped in her chest. Fear filled her mind. She had heard stories about humans, how they burned planets, how they destroyed cities, how they hunted aliens like animals. Her captain had said, if you see a human, run or kill, but never trust. But she could not run. She could not even lift her head. The human stood still for a moment, looking at her with strange eyes. One eye was dark, the other glowed red like fire, but his face was calm, not angry, not cruel. He knelt beside her, opened a small bag from his side, pulled out a water tube, and held it to her lips. She wanted to turn away, to spit, to scream, but her body chose survival. The water was cold, sweet. It filled her mouth like life itself. She drank. He wiped her face with a cloth, cleaned the blood from her forehead, looked at her arm and tied a band around it to stop the bleeding. Why? She thought. Why would a human help her? She had nothing to offer, no weapon, no secret, no power. She was just a broken soldier from a lost battle. The human finally spoke, his voice deep and strange, but he spoke in her language. Lucky I found you, he said. I don't usually help your kind. He smiled a little, but it was not a happy smile. It was tired, old, like someone who had seen too many deaths. She wanted to ask something, anything, but her body was too weak, her mind too heavy. Still she tried. Word never came out. He placed a small device near her neck, pressed a button, and a soft heat spread through her shoulder. Her pain lessened just a little. He sat beside her, looked up at the dark sky, and said nothing more. She watched him, this human, the enemy, the monster from her childhood stories, and saw something she never expected. Kindness. He could have killed her, could have left her, could have done nothing, but he chose to help. The wind grew cold, the night grew deeper, but she felt something warm in her chest, not pain, not fear, something else. Hope. She closed her eyes again, not in fear, but in peace. Maybe death would wait. Maybe she would live. Maybe the stories were wrong, and maybe this human was not her enemy. Not yet. Asterisk. She woke with a deep breath, as if the stars had filled her lungs again, as if the universe had decided she could stay for one more sunrise. Sky above her was still dark, but now quiet like a resting giant. No smoke, no screams, no fire, only the soft sound of leaves brushing in the wind. Her wounds were no longer burning, her skin wrapped in strange cloth, her arm raised on something soft, maybe a bag, maybe a jacket, but it was warm, and that was enough. She turned her head slowly, her muscles stiff, her vision blurry, and then she saw him again, the human, the one from before, the one who should have left her, the one who should have killed her. He was sitting near a small fire, not too bright, not too loud, just warm enough to survive the night, his hands working with something metal, something sharp and strange like a broken tool or maybe a weapon. He looked at her and his face changed, not with fear, not with hate, but with something else, something like relief and something like concern. You are awake, he said, slowly, as if testing her ears, as if making sure she still understood. She nodded just a little, her voice still trapped in her throat, her mouth dry, her chest tight too. Lost a lot of blood, he said. You were lucky it was me who found you, not one of the others, she thought, and her heart raced again. The stories, the warnings, the fear, all returned in one single breath. Are there more of you? She asked with a whisper, her words cracked like old glass. He looked at the fire for a moment, then shook his head. Not here, not now, maybe not anymore. Answer confused her, but she could not ask more. Her strength was like paper thin and torn. Why did you help me? She asked, not with anger, not with hope, just confusion, pure and deep. He was silent for a long moment. The wind touched the fire, the flames danced a little, and his eyes looked far away. Because I have seen too much death, he said finally, because I am tired of watching people die for flags and lies. She watched him closely, trying to understand this human, this enemy, this strange protector, who spoke like a broken poet. He stood up slowly and brought a container to her lips. Water again. Clean, cool, better than anything she had tasted in days. She drank more this time, not just to live, but because she trusted him just a little, not because of his face or his words, but because he had saved her when no one else did. What is your name? She asked. He smiled, but not with joy, more like memory, more like pain. People used to call me Ren, he said, long ago, before everything changed. Ren, she repeated. The name's strange yet soft, not like the names of her people, not like the names of war. And you? He asked. She hesitated for a second, then spoke. My name is Kayla, she said, daughter of Reha of the 5th Sky Fleet. He nodded slowly, like her name meant something. Maybe he had fought her kind before. Maybe he had watched them fall. They sat in silence, the fire, the wind, the stars above all, watching them like curious gods. You should rest, he said. Your body needs more time. I cleaned the wounds, but I do not have much medicine. She wanted to ask where he came from, where the others were, what war had done to him, what made him stay kind when the world had turned cruel. But her body was fading again, her eyes heavy, her heart slow, her breath soft like feathers. In the cold ash, she closed her eyes again. She heard him humming a tune. No words, just sound, old and gentle. Maybe a song from Earth, maybe something he made to forget the screams. She had expected pain, death, silence. Instead, she found warmth and music. And a man who did not kill. She drifted into sleep. Again, not with fear this time, but with questions. Who is he really? What had he lost? What had he seen in her broken body that made him stop? Was he the last of his kind? Was she the last of hers? And if they both survived, what would they become in the middle of a war filled with monsters, machines, and lies? Two enemies sat beside the same fire, and neither of them raised a weapon. She slept, and he watched the sky, and somewhere far above stars moved, slowly, waiting for what would come next. The fire had died, but the silence was still warm, filled with questions that floated like smoke around Keller's thoughts and never left. She opened her eyes slowly, her body stronger, her breath less heavy, the pain in her shoulder now dull like an old memory, not a fresh wound. The human was not sitting beside the fire now. He was standing a little away, back turned, eyes on the dark sky, fingers resting on the weapon hanging from his back. She sat up with effort, muscles shaking, head spinning, but heart steady. You are watching for something? She asked, voice still low but clear, and did not turn right away. He stood still for another breath, maybe two, then he spoke. Hi. I'm always watching, he said. Not just the sky, not just the land. I watch for signs. I watch for silence. I watch for betrayal. Betrayal. She repeated the word, heavy in her mouth like a stone. She had never used it before, not like that, not toward her own kind. He turned now, and his face was not soft, it was not angry either, it was tired and sharp like a knife used too many times. You do not know, do you? He asked. Keller blinked, confusion rising like cold water. No, what? She asked. He sat down again, picked up a stick, and drew lines in the ash around the fire, circles, paths, arrows, marks. She did not understand this war. You fight this mission, you follow this name you carry. He said slowly, do you know why it began? Do you know who lit the match that burned your world? We fight for peace, she said. We protect our borders, we defend our people. Ren shook his head, not with rage, not with hate, but with pity. That is the lie they gave you, he said, and you believed it because you had no reason not to, because truth is always harder than order. She felt something break inside, a small crack in a wall she had never touched before. You are saying we are the ones who started this? She asked, her voice shaking, not with pain but something colder. He nodded slowly, fingers still moving in the ash. Your fleet, your leaders, your command, they attacked. First, not with warning, not with talks, with fire, with death, with silence. After they killed Millie and Scalar could not breathe for a moment. Her chest refused to rise. Her ears heard nothing but wind. No, she whispered, we would not, we are not like that. Looked at her, and in his eyes there was no victory, no I told you so, only sadness, like he had seen this too many times. I was there, he said, not in the first strike, but soon after. I saw the cities, I saw the dust, I saw the faces of people who never knew why they died. Why would we do that? She asked, more to herself than to him, her mind now running through old memories, old words, old training, and none of it had answers. Because your leaders wanted more, he said, because humans were growing fast, because they were afraid of what we might become, because your empire cannot grow if others stand tall. She stared at the marks. He drew. The circles now looked like planets, the arrows like fleets moving across the stars. Then why help me? She asked. Again, because the question now felt bigger, deeper, full of truth and war and sorrow. Because you were not the one who gave the order, he said, because you were not my enemy. Not here, not now, not when you were broken and abandoned and left to die by those who told you to fight. His words were sharp but not cruel. They cut her thoughts open and showed her what she did not want to see. What do you want me to do? She asked, eyes on the fire, voice shaking. I want you to see, he said, just that, to see, to look at the truth, not as a soldier but as a person, to choose with your own heart, not with a command. She sat still, the fire now only glowing embers, her mind burning brighter than flames. What would you do if you were me? She asked. I was you once, he said. Not the same, not your race, not your name, but I followed orders, I believed lies until I opened my eyes. Stars above them blinked like they were listening, like they had waited for this moment for a long time. She looked up at the sky and saw it, not as a battlefield, not as a map, but as something too big to hold, too full to control. I do not know who I am anymore, she said. That is where truth begins, he answered, not with answers but with questions, not with pride but with doubt. Keller touched the bandage on her arm and felt her pulse. Still there, still alive, still beating like a second chance. She stood slowly, her legs weak, but her will stronger than before. If I walk with you, what happens? She asked. Then we see what the truth shows us, he said, and maybe we find a way to end this before more stars go dark. They looked at each other across the ashes, not as enemies, not yet as friends, but as something new, something unknown. In that moment the war paused, not outside but inside. The forest was quiet but not safe. Every shadow seemed to breathe, every tree seemed to listen, every leaf held a secret. Afraid to speak, Keller walked beside Ren, her steps slow but stronger than before, her eyes open, wider, her mind now heavy with truth and fire and doubts. The sun above them was pale, hidden behind clouds that moved like smoke from ancient battles. The light touched her skin but did not warm her heart. Ren carried a small scanner in his hand, its screen flickering with signals, and Pattins's face hard like stone shaped by storms, his eyes sharp like broken glass under light. We are not alone, he said, voice low, as if the trees had ears. We are being followed. Fela stopped, her breath caught in her chest, her hand reached for the blade Ren had given her the day before, not for war but for survival. How do you know? She asked, though deep inside she already felt it, the cold breath on her neck, the weight in the air, the sound that did not belong. They are not human, I said, and they are not here to save. Yakala felt her stomach turn, her heartbeat faster, not with fear but with something worse. Betrayal. My people, she whispered, not sure if it was a question or a wound. Yes, Ren answered, soft but sharp. They found your signal, the same one I used to stop your bleeding. Now they come to clean their mistakes. She wanted to scream but she stayed silent, her voice frozen, her thoughts racing, her chest burning with something she could not name. Why would they kill me? She asked. I followed every command. I gave my life to the cause because you are a loose thread, he said, and loose threads are pulled before they unravel the fabric. She looked ahead. The path was narrow, rocks and roots waiting to trip her, but her mind was not on the road. It was behind her in the place she once called home. Ren moved fast now, his steps light like wind, his hand on her shoulder guiding her through trees that seemed to whisper faster, now louder, now like they knew what chased them. They found a cave hidden behind vines and stone, a place forgotten by time and war and fear. Inside it was cold and dark but safe for a moment. Just one moment. Kayla sat on the ground, her body shaking, her hands gripping the blade, not for defense but for comfort. They will come, she said. They will not stop until I am gone. Then we do not let them find you, he said. We change the signal. We move at night. We use the old paths, the ones they erased from the maps. How do you know these paths? She asked, her eyes locked on his face, trying to read the stories behind the scars. Because I was a shadow once, he said. I walked where others could not. I listened when others slept. I survived by knowing what others forgot. She wanted to ask more, but a sound outside cut the air like fire cuts paper, a sharp high tone followed by silence, and then a voice was Kalaha. Name was spoken, not with love, not with hope, but with command, a voice she knew too well. Captain Arishi. She stood slowly, legs stiff, heart loud, mind split between past and present. Trent placed a hand on her arm, not to stop her, not to control her, just to remind her he was still there. Akela, we know you are injured. We know you are with the human. Step out and we will make your death quick. The words were clean and cold like steel dipped in snow. Kala closed her eyes just for a breath and saw faces from her memories. Smiling, proud, believing in something that now felt like dust. They do not want to witness, Ren said. They want silence. They want to erase the mistake. I was loyal, she said. I followed orders. I believed them. So did I, he replied when she looked at him. Really looked, not as human, not as other, not as enemy, just as someone who had stood where she now stood. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes, the fire inside her, no longer fear, no longer doubt, something new, something hard, something clear. Then, let them come, she said. I will not hydrate, not at once, not with pride, but with understanding. They stood together in the dark light of the cave, their backs to stone, their eyes to the mouth of the cave, their hands ready, their hearts steady. The voice called her name again, this time with anger, this time with the sound of guns behind it. Enemies were coming, yes, but not from another world, not from another race. They came from the same place that raised her, that trained her, that promised her truth. And in that moment, Kayla was no longer theirs. The cave was quiet again, but the silence now felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath, like the rocks were listening, like the world was waiting for what she would choose. Kayla sat by the edge where sunlight barely touched the stone, her hands still tight around the blade, her eyes wide, Open not for danger but for something more, for truth. Ren moved carefully, checking the old scanner, checking the small bag of supplies, checking the path ahead like a ghost from another life, like a shadow with a mission. They will search every valley, he said. They will fly over this mountain. They will burn every hiding place. If they have to. Kayla nodded, her voice caught between fear and fire. I know she did not ask if he would stay. She already knew he would not leave. Not yet. Not until she chose her side. Not until she saw what needed to be seen. Ren reached into his jacket and pulled out a black device. No light, no sound, just cold metal and memory. This, he said, is what they killed for. She looked at it, her breath slow, her fingers curled around her knees. She waited for him to explain. A data core from an old station, he said, built by humans. Destroyed by your fleet, hidden before it fell. Now it holds the story they tried to erase. He placed it in her hands, and she felt it, not heavy in weight, but heavy in meaning, like it carried lives, like it carried voices that had never been heard. She looked at Ren, her eyes full of questions. Show me. He nodded and connected the core to a small projector. Light spilled across the cave walls like stars opening into scenes not of war, not of battles, but of people, families on distant colonies, building homes, planting trees, laughing under strange skies, hoping for peace in places no one remembered. Now then came the fire, not from human hands, but from her own fleet. Silent strikes from orbit. No warning, no message, just flames, just ash, just silence. Kayla could not move her body, frozen, her heart crushed between pride and shame, her mind now screaming louder than any weapon ever fired. Why? She whispered. Because your leaders feared our growth. Ren said. Because we were not part of their order, because we wanted freedom, not control. She watched more images, a mother holding her child as the sky burned, a school falling into the sea, a signal sent in panic, never reaching help. Then the last part, the voice of a commander from her own fleet confirming the mission complete, speaking of success with no regret, with no pause, with no soul. Her breath broke like glass. Her blade dropped from her hand, her eyes now full of water, not from pain, not from injury, but from something deeper, something that cracked the core of who she was. Everything I knew was a lie, she said. Ren sat beside her, not with victory, not with joy, but with the weight of truth. Not everything, he said. You still have a choice. She looked at him, hands shaking, heart broken. What choice is left? She asked. My people want me dead. Your people want me gone. I am nothing to anyone. You are more than orders, he said. More than blood, more than a uniform. You are a voice, and voices matter when truth is buried. Kayla looked at the cave walls, now painted with the light of lost lives, with the truth she was never meant to see, and she knew the path forward would not be easy, would not be safe. If I go to the humans, they will not trust me, she said. They will see me as one of them, one of the killers. Some will, Ren said, but some will listen, and sometimes one voice is enough to start a storm. She picked up the blade, not as a soldier, not as a weapon, but as a promise, as a piece of her past she would carry into a different future. We need to move, she said. They will come soon, and I want to be far from this cave before they find it. Ren smiled, not with pride but with respect. There is an outpost 2 days from here, he said, quiet, hidden, run by old allies. Not military, but people who remember before the war began. They can help us send the signal. Then we go. Kayla said, her voice steady, her eyes clear. Her purpose no longer bound by uniform, no longer chained by command. They left the cave as the sun began to rise. Golden light breaking through clouds, like the world itself was waking from a long dream. Behind them lay the ashes of lies, ahead of them the fire of truth waiting to be shared, waiting to be believed, waiting to burn down everything false. And in Kayla's heart something new was born. Not hate, not revenge, but a mission to speak what was silenced, to show what was hidden, to walk through the fire and never look back. Asterisk. The sun was high now, its heat pressing on their backs as Kayla and Ren moved across dry hills where the ground cracked like old paper, where wind carried the scent of dust. And Danga. Kayla walked with purpose now, not just to survive, not just to escape, but to reach something real, something pure, something not touched by lies and warring. Was silent most of the journey, his eyes scanning the path ahead, his fingers resting on the small signal device hidden in his coat, waiting for the right moment to send their message to the outpost. They stopped only once to drink water near a broken satellite dish, rusted and useless, like a memory too far gone to matter how far. She asked, her voice stronger, her body healing, her soul still in pieces, but willing to fight. Half a day, Ren said. Maybe less if the winds stay quiet, maybe more if they find us first. Kayla knew what he meant. Not wild beasts, not broken droids, not falling trees, but her own kind, the soldiers trained beside her, raised beside her, taught to protect and taught to destroy. If they catch us, they will not ask why, she said. They will not listen. Then we must move faster, he said, because time is not our friend, and truth does not wait forever. They crossed into a narrow canyon where shadows fell early, and eyes watched from above, not birds, not machines, but something worse. Ren stopped suddenly and raised his hand the way a soldier does when silence must be complete, when death walks too close. Dropped low beside a rock, her fingers tight around her blade, her eyes scanning the cliffs. Then came the sound, not loud, not sharp, but steady, a low hum like wind through metal, a drone not large, but armed, designed to track and mark, not to kill, but to call others. Ren threw a small device into the air, and a flash of light burst for a second, enough to blind the drone, enough to confuse its path. They ran together, feet pounding against stone hearts racing not with fear but with the weight of what would come if they failed. At the edge of the canyon they found an old rail line, broken tracks leading into a tunnel carved long ago by workers now long gone. Inside the tunnel, the air was thick and cold, the silence deeper than before, like the world itself was holding its voice. They walked through it without speaking, Kayla thinking of the faces from the memory core, the children, the laughter, the fire that ended at Ula. At the other end of the tunnel they saw at the outpost, small and hidden, half covered in vines and rock, a building forgotten by time but still alive. Ren checked his scanner and gave a nod. Signal is strong here, he said. We can send the truth from this point if the system still works. Kayla followed him inside the outpost. Dark halls lit by flickering panels, old posters peeling from the walls, messages of hope from another era. In the control room, Ren powered up the terminal and connected the data core wires, humming, lights blinking, dust dancing in the glow. He looked at her and waited, because this part was not his. This choice, this risk, this truth belonged to her alone. Kayla stepped forward, her hand above the button, her heart above the storm. Her past behind her, now her future shaped by this single breath. She proceeded, the signal sent across the stars, riding light and silence, carrying voices, once lost, now rising again from ashes, now refusing to be forgotten. Ren checked the screen and smiled. It is moving fast, he said. No block, no interference. They will hear it and they will know. But before he could say more, alarms screamed from the wall, red lights flashing, a warning, not of system failure but of something worse. They are here, he said. Short-range ships landing fast, no time to run, no way to hit it. Looked at him, and then at the blade on the table, then at the open door, and she knew what had to be done. Go, she said. Take the data core, take the message, protect it. What about you? Ren asked, his voice not cold, not afraid, but full of something stronger. They want me, she said. Not you. If you stay, we both fall. If you leave, one of us. Sastering stared at her for one moment, one breath, then he took the core and turned to the back exit, his eyes speaking what words could not. Kayla stepped outside, into the light, into the heat, into the face of soldiers she once called family, now pointing weapons, now speaking her name like it was a curse. She raised her hands, not to fight, not to beg, but to stand like a wall between truth and silence, between the past and what could still be saved. And as the wind blew through the broken hills, as Ren escaped into the wild with the message still alive, Kayla stood tall in the storm she once helped build and made her decision. The sky was burning again, not with war, not with fire, but with light from the message Kayla had sent across the stars, a message filled with names and faces and truths. Long buried ships moved like shadows in orbit above the silent hills where Kayla stood alone, her body tired, her heart calm, her eyes locked on the enemy that once called her sister. She did not speak as they surrounded her, their weapons raised, their boots crushing the dust. Beneath them, their commander stepping forward with armor polished and eyes cold. You were given honor, you were given rank, and you chose to betray us, the commander said, voice sharp like steel wrapped in Kakala looked at him and did not blink, her voice soft but stronger than any gun. I chose truth. I chose life. I chose to see what they tried to hide, what you still try to bury beneath your medals and orders. Soldiers behind him shifted, unsure, not because of her words alone, but because of what they had seen, what the signal had shown, what their minds could no longer unsee. The commander raised his hand to speak again. But before he could, the sky split open with thunder, not from weapons but from ships arriving fast and low, bearing no flag, bearing no fair human ships. Ren had reached them, the message had been heard, and the answer had come, not with armies, not with rage, but with presence, with power, with proof. The commander turned his head, eyes wide, not with awe but with something worse. Doubt you called them here, he said, stepping back, his voice now shaking. I did not call them, Kayla said. I showed them what was hidden, and they chose to come not for war but for truth, not to destroy but to stand where silence once ruled. The human ships hovered above, without firing, without speaking, just watching, just reminding everyone that lies no longer held the sky alone. One of the alien soldiers lowered his weapon, his eyes on Kayla, not with hate, not with shame, but with something new, respect. Another followed, then another, until only the commander stood alone, weapon still raised, mouth still full of commands that now held no weight. You will be punished, he said. You will be erased. You will be forgotten. Kayla stepped forward, her shadow falling over the dust, her voice quiet but filled with light. I already was, but now I am more than what you made me, more than what you broke. Behind her, the human ships opened their doors, and Ren stepped out, not in armor, not with soldiers, but with people, scientists, diplomats, survivors from colonies once thought lost. They carried no weapons, only recordings, only memories, only proof. They walked past Kayla and stood beside her without speaking, without fear. This is not your planet, the commander said. Not your war, not your right. Ren looked at him, eyes clear like water in winter, and replied, truth belongs to no planet, and justice belongs to all. The silence that followed was not empty, it was full of history, full of pain, full of voices that had waited too long to be heard. Kayla turned to the soldiers who once followed her, who once believed as she once did. You were not born for this, she said. You were not made for silence. You were not trained to kill truth. You were told lies, and now you must choose what you serve. Some stepped forward, some stayed behind, but none fired, none shouted, none could deny what stood before them. In that moment, Kayla knew the war was not over, but something had changed. The storm had turned, the sky had shifted. The commander dropped his weapon, not a surrender, Not as peace, but as defeat. He walked away, his boots now silent, his pride now broken, his army now gone. Ella looked at the sun rising behind the hills and felt its warmth not just on her skin but in her bones. Rin stood beside her, his face calm, his voice low. You changed everything. No, she said, I just refused to stay blind. He smiled, and together they watched the sky as new signals flew across the stars, as new messages reached worlds. Still healing, still afraid, still waiting. Keller was no longer a soldier, no longer a shadow, no longer a name lost in dust. She was a voice that chose truth. She was a light in a dark cave. She was the one who stood when silence said Neeland. Across the stars, her name spread not as traitor, not as killer, not as lost, but as Kayla, the one who stood with humans when no one else wouldn't. The story that began with flies on her wounds ended with stars speaking her name.